everyone, it's Tanja from Tanja Kraus Horsemanship here, and in today's edition of Building a Citizen, I'm going to talk about how I start to teach a horse how to tie up. And I've got Galliano with me here. She's a 5-year-old warm blood mare. She has been started by me when she was 3, and for the last 12 months she has been turned out in a paddock. She hasn't been tied up or anything like that for the last 12 months. She hasn't been tied up for the last 12 months or so. The first thing that I do when I'm looking at tying a young horse up or starting to teach a horse how to lead, how to tie, is to teach them how to lead. They have to understand the concept of coming forward off the pressure of the halter, and you'll be able to see how I do that process in the Teaching a Horse to Lead video. What I'm going to cover now is what I do after the horse is good about coming off the pressure of the halter. What I start to do, first I begin with a rail or a round yard or some kind of structure like this that has rounded, smooth edges, okay? Because what I'm going to do is I'm going to pop the lead over the rounded, smooth edge of the top. I'm going to wrap it around the bottom, and I'm going to wrap it back around the top like this. So what that's going to do is if Galliano pulls, it's going to offer, or if she backs to the end of the halter, it's going to offer a little bit of resistance, but if she really backs and starts pulling on it, it's going to slowly slip like this, and it's going to offer resistance all the way until it completely unravels. And hopefully during that process, I will be able to intervene and perhaps ask Galliano to move forward to encourage her to think through that process. The reasons horses get bothered about being tied up is because we either tie them up and walk away and leave them, and when they start to feel that if they do step backwards or something worries them or scares them or something like that, and they do get a little bit worried, what happens is that whole halter locks down on their head and their instinct is to push against pressure. So we know that horses' instinct is to push against pressure. So you can see here I've just moved just far enough away from Galliano so I can give her the opportunity of figuring out that she's tied up. So you can see she's putting her head down and whatnot. Now I must say that for the purpose of this video, I am tying her to this this panel, this cattle yard panel. It's a perfect structure to tie to, but this one is not particularly safe because it's only wired to that post and things like that. If you are going to use a panel of some description, make sure that it is secured very well. And also with a horse like Galliano, you probably just saw there, her desire is to put her feet out and through, and so I would be worried about her putting her feet through those rails, but I am standing right here, so I'm not too worried about leaving her. Basically the purpose of this is to tie her up, kind of walk away from her, and then, yeah, let nature take its course. So she just saw a horse across the road, so she turned to look and she kind of ran into the lead and went, oh, there's a lead there, I'm tied up. And she did the perfect response. So she hit the lead. She hit the end of the lead and she came back within the lead. If she had have panicked, I would have waited for a little minute to see if she could get herself out of the panic. If she was unable to get out of the paddock, I would have intervened and caused her to go forward and get her own release in the halter. So she looks pretty happy there. She's starting to go to sleep. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to walk around the other side of her and I'm going to ask her to move her hindquarter, and then I'm going to walk around this side and ask her to move her hindquarter. So I'm actually going to cause her to move a little bit, and when I go over the other side, what she may or may not do is try to walk away, and the lead will prevent her from walking away, and it's going to enable me to sort of cause her to hit the end of the lead, but hopefully within enough stress-free environment that she kind of gets to the end of the lead and then just comes back into it. So I'm going to help her learn that she is secured. So you see, by causing her to move her feet like that, her instinct was to lower her head, which caused her to run into the lead or be restricted by the lead. And then her instinct was to try to come to me. And again, that caused the lead to take up on her face. And both times she responded very well and came back within the halter. So I'm pretty happy with that. And that's the kind of thing I would do with a young horse time and time again. To teach them how to be tied up. I would bring them out, I would loop the rein. As I said, this is purely for the purposes of the video. I would make sure that it was safe to tie her up. I would not walk away from this situation because it's likely if she pulled, there's a chance that the panel would actually move because it's not secured very well. So I would do this with a colt day after day after day. Perhaps I would just tie them up and brush them and pick out their feet and do a couple of things like that to sort of get them used to staying in the one place and being restricted. And that would be my step one. I would make sure that they had repeated many times the action of kind of hitting that lead and coming back within it before I went on to step two. So I'm about to show you what step two is. So what I have here is a figure 8 ring, and you can buy different kind of horse safety tie rings. I think one's called the safety tie, one's called the tie blocker. There's probably other products on the market. I will have these for sale quite shortly, these figure 8s. And the purpose of it is you secure the top part of the figure 8 to a fence post or something secure, and then what I'm going to do then is I'm going to take the end of the lead, I'm going to thread it through the big ring, and I'm going to loop it over the top of the small ring. And then I'm going to secure, I've got a clip here, but I'm just doing it on the front so you guys can see. I'm going to secure that top ring to my tie-up area, so whether that's by some sort of clip or whether it's just by a metal hook. Now, if you are using something like a hook or something like that, I would make sure that you can put a rubber stopper on it or put a close on it, because when horses rub their faces, they will get those halters, halters stuck on it. And I'll do another video about safety in tying up. This is just teaching a young horse how to tie. So my next step will be that I actually secure her to this. It offers a little bit more resistance than the panel does, because the panel's only looped around, but it still offers resistance that if she really lays on that and pulls, it offers resistance until she steps forward into it. It's a safety tie-up ring. It's a little awkward for me because I've still got her looped around the fence. And then I would go through exactly the same process as I did earlier by asking her to move and securing her with this. And depending on how much slip the device that you purchase offers, you could then choose obviously the tie blocker and other products like that. So obviously the tie blocker and other products like that are designed for you to permanently tie your horse up with them as a safety device. So like I say, if Galliano chooses to pull back now, the device is going to offer some resistance, but she is eventually going to be able to get free. And in the horse community, there's two different types of owners, and there she gave a perfect demonstration of wanting to rub her head on something. Now I don't think there's anything for her to get caught on, but I certainly don't want to take the risk. So I'm going to tell her not to rub her head like that. And there she ran into the end of the ring. The horse community really is divided in two when it comes to these devices. I personally prefer to use some kind of safety device like this, because all of my horses do get taught how to tie up. The horses will learn to eventually stand there all day if I need them to, you know, tied to a trailer at a show or something like that. And so my personal belief is that if one of my horses pulls back, it must be for a very good reason. They must be in a panic situation, and I do want them to be able to get free. I've got a friend who had a horse tied to a, had a quick release knot tied on the horse, had it secured with some kind of ring situation. The ring was in a big gate post, and what they think happened, it was a well-trained horse. It had been to many cutting events and had spent hours and hours tied up with no problem at all. And what they think actually happened was that a brown snake went between the horse's legs. It panicked and reared, and because it was tied, it actually pulled the entire post out of the ground and then proceeded to tow that post across the paddocks through barbed wire fences. It did survive, but it did also, there was many vet bills and a long recovery afterwards. So I know that if my horses pull back, that there's a really good reason for it, and I want them to be able to get free. The difference between using a ring like this or some kind of safety device like this and baling twine is, horses can learn that baling twine, if they give a quick snap, that they can snap it. And what will happen there, if she gave a quick snap, it would just start to drag, and it would still have a forward pressure on it. Whereas with baling twine, the horses can learn to snap it, and eventually they can learn to snap it, and eventually they will learn to just give a jerk like that, and they get an instant release. So they're getting a release from doing that behaviour. Whereas Galliano, if she was to pull back very sharply like that, she wouldn't get an immediate release. It'd almost be like me holding on to her and saying, no, come forward, come forward, come forward. And hopefully during her panic, before she got to the end of that 12-foot line, she would actually remember to come forward, because the rope is there cueing her the whole time. Whereas on a quick release situation, it's an immediate get out. But still, in a safety situation, if the horse is running backwards, then they are able to get themselves free and get out of harm's way. So that was a perfect demonstration by her. She just tried to give a really sharp jerk, and it didn't work for her. There was no snapping. So I would actually leave that there as a tying up session, because she has kind of bumped into the rope a few times, both softly, and she just did that really sharp kind of pull, and she's still attached. She hasn't panicked. So I would, that's a perfect tying up session to me, whatever it's been, the 14 minutes, that's a really good time for a tying up session, even less, even 5 minutes a day, 10 minutes a day, until you build more and more confidence about being able to leave your horse tied up like this, and you can go and maybe, do a couple of jobs close by. I don't think we should tie our horses and leave you know, go down the street to the shops or anything like that. But if you've got a couple of jobs, and as I said, be very vigilant about any hooks that are close by that they can rub on and not only injure themselves but get caught in the halter. And horses that are a little leggy like Galliano wanting to paw and things like that, that they can't get trapped in fences and things. But other than that, I would be more than happy to sort of go and maybe pick up manure for 5 minutes or something like that, and then come along and untie her. So she's learning short periods of patience, short periods of restriction. I'm tied up, and she's learning how to be a citizen. So I hope that helps with teaching your young horses how to tie, and I will look forward to seeing your comments.